It's not okay to think that the Earth is flat.
Is the Earth flat or round? It's round. Okay, now let's see. How do we go about proving that?
Earth, throughout its life, even when it formed, it was spinning, and it got a little wider at the equator than it does at the poles. So it's not actually a sphere. It's oblate, and officially it's an oblate spheroid. That's what we call it. But not only that, it's slightly wider below the equator than above it. A little chubbier. Chubby's a good way. It's like pear-shaped.
What you're seeing here is a mirage.
Hey, sunrise.
It's not okay to say that the Earth is flat. This is some sort of strange denial. I don't know where it comes from. And it's something where I keep getting this question. We really need to put this question to bed because we've known the Earth is a sphere for a long time.
Flattoberfest 2022 is here. Tickets are on early bird sale for the month of April. 22% off. Go to flatearthfestivals.com for tickets. Welcome everyone back to the Karen B channel with a special Karen B stream. Tonight I have with me a woman that I met 2 years ago now, because it was during the Event 202 project, I believe, that Dave Murphy started and got everybody going on. And we did that live event, which was a response to Event 201. But we won't get too much into the detail of that because that is not the subject of today's discussion. But that is where we met. So she's been here for a while. And anyway, I am friends with her on Facebook. And I saw her posting about her change in diet, where she left the vegan diet and started eating meat again, reintroduced meat back into her diet, and saw her health improve. And I experienced the same thing, but I don't think to such a drastic drastic change as you personally, because I wasn't on the diet for that long, but I did do it. And I wasn't a junk food vegan. I really did put in the effort to learn to cook because I know how to cook. I'm a good cook. I was making my own food. I was getting good stuff. And it's still, while I felt better at first, it did after a while, it just didn't sustain me anymore. And I had to reintroduce animal products into my diet to feel better. And anyway, I thought this was a really, really good discussion to have, because I feel like in this community, if you want to call it that, whatever this is that we're in, I feel like there's a lot of diet shaming going on, and there's a lot of people that say that you have to, you should be eating a vegan diet or else you're like some, heathen, blood cult member. And I just don't agree with that.
Yeah, we have to get into it.
So, do you want to, maybe introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself to begin with?
Sure.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. First, I want to say that veganism is one of those things that seems to be impossible to get right. So nobody should be beating themselves up about having done it wrong, because it's impossible to get right. But yeah, my name's Yasmeen, and you can find me online in kind of health and wellness space. And I've been doing that for a few years. I talk a lot about psychology, nutrition. I do a bit of occult spirituality and tarot reading and things like that. But for me, the health journey started out many, many years ago. And it was actually along the path of eating disorders that I ended up in the vegan space. And I think that's a really common story that people don't really tend to talk about. And I think it's the darker side of that story. And it's something that people can see from the outside, or when they've walked away from this, the individuals are taking it too far or getting unhealthy. Mm-hmm. But when you're just getting into it, it seemed lucrative. It was actually, I want to speak up more about this and bring it into the public eye, because the person that got me into it was Freely the Banana Girl. And that is a prime example of targeting of the young female demographic that's much more vulnerable and can be swayed by these ideas of just eat whatever you want and never get fat, and more along the lines of thinness and obsession with image and diet. So I did it for health, but it was also this let me cut food groups out thing. So I did it for about 7.5 years. So that's my story in terms of how I found it and how it kept evolving into taking it to the next level. There seems to be a pathway that individuals tend to take with this, because I think it's impossible to stay doing it in one way for too long, because you start to think, I can refine this, I can improve this, I must be doing it wrong, I can do it better. So the phases seem to go from cooked to more whole foods, plant-based, then low fat, and sometimes it go into raw, and then fruitarianism. So that's what I did, and I got really, really sick. So that's my story, having figured that out and come out of it. But I'll let you direct this how you want to break it down.
Okay, well, okay, so when you first got into veganism, so what was the first, what would you describe as the first phase of it?
It's really interesting because we could talk about it in terms of the physical changes, or let's say what we call detox, of leaving certain things behind and experiencing a whole shift in the way that you do things. But there's also the cultural and the emotional and the social levels as well. So it's very multi-layered, and it comes with its own bubble. So I think the shifts that came with it were this multifaceted experience that, okay, I'm doing something completely different. And it means that the way that I speak to people is different, where I go is different, and how I live my life and how I relate to others is different. So I experienced, I would say the physical element for sure in the beginning, what you call a detox from, if you're changing, for example, from much more processed foods or a different way of doing things, and then you're cooking a lot more, or you're having a lot more raw foods, there's going to be a change with that for sure. It's like you don't really even know what to control for. So you can't even say the change is the veganism necessarily. It's what you may have taken out and how drastic the difference is. For me, I was already doing kind of eliminating things over time. I was already there. So it just felt like a gradual slide into more and more extreme ways of living. But there was I don't know, I think I might not be the best person to say what it felt like from the get-go, because I was cutting things up for a long time and kind of experiencing the eating disordered reality.
What do you mean by cutting things out? Like, were you
cutting out food groups, like no oil, no sugar, no this. I was very restrictive to begin with. So in reality, it enhanced the orthorexia that I was already experiencing, but put it in a box. It made it socially acceptable. It was like, well, I'm vegan. This is what I'm doing. And it's a bonus that this is better for the environment, and this is this, and this is that. And it just, yeah, it really, it's a snowballing effect of getting into something. And I think it's different what people are looking at now than what it was when I got into it. It was just kind of a new thing, like, oh, this, look at this. No one's recommended this before. Whereas now it's very obviously being flashed at us. But having gone through this experience, it's kind of like, well, it's not all cracked out. What it seems at all.
Right. It's not as great as it seems to be. So, so what did you notice start declining about your health that made you turn it around?
I see. I was doing I had a lot of fun in the beginning because I was cooking a lot more, and I was inventing things, and I was looking up recipes and doing a lot of stuff. It was a lot of fun, but it went bad pretty quickly. That's kind of what happened. I became a slave to that lifestyle, which is not something that I expected to happen. If I don't get my food within 2 hours, I'm now low in blood sugar, and I'm shaking, and I need my meal. I need my fix. If I don't have access to this exact meal, I'm not going to eat. I'm going to be angry. I'm going to be irritable. If I don't have access to the right tools or the right foods, I can't make it. So many rules got introduced into my life that the first thing was the joy around it initially was gone. And then the health effects started to pile on. I didn't notice at first what it was, but gradually over time, my gut issues became horrendous. And obviously by the 7th year, 7.5 year, I started to connect the dots that my problems were related to how I was eating. I wasn't thinking straight at all. It really is an ideology, because for me, it could not have been the vegan diet. It could not have been how I was eating. I was into all the groups of detoxing and holistic healing, fruitarianism, detox. Everything's detox. That's the problem with this lifestyle. Everything's detox. Your teeth are falling out, it's detox. Your hair is falling out, it's detox. You know, you're dying, you're gray, you don't look good. It's just detox. The new you is coming. So at some point, you never know when. So that was one of the pitfalls. It's like, I'm experiencing ill health, but I am not linking it to what I'm eating. I'm thinking, well, I'm eating the best way I possibly could.
Right.
So it's obviously not how I'm eating. Yeah. That's why you keep tweaking it, because then it's like, well, maybe it's these types of vegetables or things. I'll just do this. I'll just do that. Obviously, raw is king. It's supreme. That's what I need to do. It's a warped mentality. It's a big distortion that once you get into that hall of mirrors, you don't have anything from the outside that is reflecting back to you that's making any sense. It's just internal dialogues and groups of individuals that have their own interpretation of it, but you lose touch with your own intuition and body. I had a lot of autoimmune issues. That's the main thing. That's why I would put the warning out and speak about it.
Okay.
Yeah. Because that's a big indicator.
A lot of probably, what did you think about reintroducing fats? Because I feel like fat, like the non-fat thing, is a huge misconception. Because I feel like the fat is kind of what sustains you. It's like, you know, and then you find out that your brain tissue is made of fat, right? Yeah. So you need to eat fat to feed
your hormones, your nerves, your brain. It's fundamental. But I would not have made the shift that I did if I hadn't reached a critical stage and I was starving, because the ideology was too deeply steeped in there. I thought fat was evil, and that's what these movements are repeating. And that's already the misconception that we're all living with, that we everything has to be low fat. So we strip the natural components away from each other and give you something that's far more processed. But we do need saturated fat. And the cultures that keep this in their diet, especially into older age, they have less incidence of things like Parkinson's and dementia and Alzheimer's and joint disorders. Whereas we're just cutting all this stuff out. And in a short span of time of me having done that, I experienced declining and terrible health that should not have been my 20s. I wasted it on this. And it's a big regret. But I wouldn't have made the shift and I wouldn't have made the connection unless I had started having sudden and extreme cravings for raw liver out of nowhere. And it created such a battle within me, because for me, it was no, it's wrong. This is not right. You can't kill anything to live. That stuff's toxic. It's unhealthy. And this type of dogmatic stuff keeps being repeated to the point that I desperately wanted a boiled egg for the final year of my experience. I wanted one. My body wanted one. I remembered what it tasted like when I was younger, but I stayed strong. No, that this is wrong. And then one day I really, really wanted it. And I stumbled across Medical Medium, a post on Facebook saying how toxic and evil eggs were. And I was like, see, the vegan gods have spoken. It's obviously wrong. So it's just this loop that's taking you further away from what your body's calling for. And there's just nothing like having not done it for so long and then to just try it again. Because I was convinced that if I tried those raw eggs, that was my first experiment, that it would be disgusting and I would hate it. And I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to prove that what I've been doing is correct. And it's the path. And I will repent from this. It's very religious and dogmatic. But I didn't prove that it was wrong. I actually brought myself back to life. Like my neurons were zinging again, and I was just like, what? What? This is not supposed to be like this.
So what did you eat first? You ate raw eggs?
Yeah, I just cracked 2 eggs in a cup, and I just said, this is going to be horrible, and it's not going to work. Because the reason that I was avoiding all of this stuff was I was convinced it was bad for the digestion. And that's one of the most common misconceptions that there is. Oh yeah, meat rots in your gut. Well, it's the plant matter that ferments. So it's so far from reality. Mm-hmm. But I just drank that, and I expected, I don't know what I thought was going to happen, but I didn't expect that at all. The moment that it hit my tongue, everything went silent, and there was just like this singing of angels. That's the only way I can describe it. And it just felt like the moment it touched my tongue, it's as if a key was put in the correct lock. Substances began to diffuse into my body, and finally we're home. Honestly, my body was screaming like, oh my God, this. Where has this been the entire time? What have you been doing for a decade? Like, so,
that's
funny. it was a bit loud, and I could not ignore it from that point onwards. I thought, well, I have to push on. I'm going to try other stuff. If it was just a meh, I would think to myself, well, I have morals. I'll just keep to my path, but it opened my eyes. What I had been looking at around the time that I made the switch, watching a lot of the vegan epitome of malnourishment videos on YouTube, kind of considering some stuff and thinking, well, how can I merge how I'm living right now with my dream of having a little mountainside with goats and having goat cheese and lavender? And how am I going to do this if I'm so black and white about this thing, to the point that I'm policing my family members, I'm cutting people out of my life, and this is horrible to say out loud, but I have to get it out of my soul. I starved my boyfriend for an entire 2 years. We're still together 3.5 years now, but at the beginning he went vegan as well, and then I went raw, and he did it with me for 2 years. And looking back at that time, the guy was becoming a skeleton. And we're going with it. It's not right.
Wow. So did he go back? Did he start eating the animal products same time as you? Yeah.
Yeah. We did the switch together.
And did he feel the same thing as you? Was he like, oh yeah, buddy?
No, because he'd done it so short. And before that, yeah. So he just,
because I did it for 7 months, and I'm telling you, the first thing I did is I fried myself some eggs, and I was like, yes, eggs. I ate eggs and potatoes because I love eggs and potatoes. So I felt like that was it. I was like, yes, I feel sustained now, and I actually was just vegetarian for a while. I still didn't eat meat for a while, and I actually did okay with that, but I still needed that something, I needed the butter, I needed the eggs, and like some organic cheese. Like that's what I was on for a while before I went back to eating meat. But yeah.
No, even that will do you. I have people that come and comment and say, well, I've been vegetarian for 20 years. I'm like, well, you're still getting bioavailable nutrition.
Yeah.
So you've got some stores going, but it depends on each person when they run out. So, Kieran, my partner, didn't go the full way, but he was always hungry, and it was never enough. So I think the biggest difference for him was just being able to eat again and feel full and not be so fatigued and have gut problems. That's, I think, the main thing that a lot of people come into, but especially with young guys, one of the big markers is just beginning to, because we know the fat is connected to the hormone production, just becoming more listless and fatigued. And I guess the testosterone levels go down as well. My hormone levels also got all messed up, and then the autoimmune disorders. So if you have predispositions, and the longer you go, and the more your nutrient stores get depleted, it's it's like just a big risk. You're just gambling with your life, how far it can go. So I have a different view on it now than I did then. Then it was like, well, this is, the golden grail of what we're supposed to be doing.
Well, a lot of people say that. Like, I run into a lot of people in, the whatever you want to call it, truth seeking community or whatever. They're looking for alternative ways to live because they don't like to follow the mainstream, which I get, but I feel like the vegan diet is it is pushed mainstream, very much so.
Yeah.
And also with the invention of these weird, like very meat-like mystery meat products, and they're cloning meat in the labs or make it whatever they're growing, weird shit. I don't know. But it just seems like another way to control the food supply, to deplete the health of the people, especially, and like, as you say, you're talking about, your boyfriend getting skinny and him starving. Like my boyfriend, Ted, I know for a fact if he wasn't eating meat, he'd probably waste away to nothing because he has such a high metabolism. And he's so active and he needs that protein and those calories, and it's just like if he doesn't eat enough, you can see he gets lightheaded, and it just makes me wonder how many people, maybe, I mean, I don't know how many men would actually continue with the vegan diet if they would feel that way when doing it, but I mean, I can't imagine they would. But it just, to me, seeing that happen, it makes me feel like that's like part of the plan. Let's make the men weak,
No, there's definitely an agenda there. But you can push yourself pretty far when you believe in something and you can ignore the signs of your body, especially when you don't speak its language. So that's one of the main things that I focus on, because if you don't speak its language, you don't know what it's saying. When you are starting to lose sleep or get irritable or agitated, you don't connect the dots. And when there's so many other confounding factors, people are very quick to ignore diet or nutrition as a basis for anything. They'll focus on everything else, but that is somehow pushed to the side. And it's quite fundamental, but that's why I focus so much on it. But I was focusing on the wrong things. And I think we like to complicate these things and say, well, this is the one thing that would work for everybody. So that's why I think veganism as a whole isn't that, because it's quite a small percentage of individuals that end up doing it for really long and say, wow, it's been amazing. Mm-hmm. So pushing it on everyone, we can definitely assume that's either kind of a foolish lack of foresight, or it's an agenda. It's a definite means of derailing people off of a certain path or their connection to their bodies. And most things tend to lie in between those two things, because it would be a very foolish thing to assume one thing is for everybody. But something that I learned from my experience and that woke up in me when I went back to those animal products was actually my connection to animals, my connection to the land, my connection to what my body wants and how it absorbs and what it needs and what fuel it actually breaks down and works on. And that's been a part of our ancestry for all of time. Ruminants and grazing and the health of the soil through the ruminants, using the animal in its entirety, honoring its life cycle and giving back. What could be more primal or natural to our being than that? And we're walking around and saying, well, the most natural thing is for us to all move to the tropics and eat mangoes, 30 kilograms of mangoes a day. No, it's not.
I like mangoes. I would eat.
Yeah, they're great. Or even having debates constantly back and forth, like, no, we should all cook our little plants. No, we shouldn't cook our plants. We should do this. We should do that. It's like, it's so much noise when at the end of the day, to some people, they don't even have the privilege to discuss this or not, and they just eat what's available, and they subsist off of the animal products and the animals that can sustain them when they're able to eat them. So speaking to somebody like that, it's a far different story than, well, I choose to deliberately starve myself because A, I believe it's healthier without having looked into the background. B, I think it's trendy. Or, C, I'm right, you're wrong. It's not.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that.
Yeah. Or a lot of people will say they do it for the animals, and okay. But I still don't see how you can maintain like your own health. If you want to sacrifice your own health for that, that's one thing. I guess that's kind of what they're doing.
Yeah, it's a process of disconnect, because coming back to it in the way that I have has given me a lot of motivation to ensure that what I'm doing is connected to the land and animals. So if it's a more intentional way of doing things, because before I guess it's a fear of death and mortality and life, and maybe a lack of understanding of how those cycles actually operate. I don't know. Everybody comes to it from a different angle, I guess, but I feel like I have a deeper appreciation and understanding where I am now and know how I'm going to move forwards. I would like to learn how to fully honor an animal and make that transition from life to death. People are scared of that, but we're really removed from it as well. So it's only natural that we're trying to sterilize it more and more and more and more until our food's from a packet. What does that even mean?
Yeah, I actually killed and butchered a chicken for the first time myself a couple of weeks ago.
Wow.
It was like a little over a week ago. It was a rooster. It was a bad rooster I had. He was actually injuring the hens because I have chickens for the eggs. I love eggs. I got tons of eggs. Eat the eggs all the time. And then we just keep the chickens for the eggs. We don't actually eat the chickens.
Yeah.
But we had a rooster, and the rooster he was just a mean rooster. You couldn't he was attacking everybody. And so, well, we dispatched him. And I thought, well, if I have to do this anyway, I'm going to go ahead and process it and butcher it, and I'm going to use it, I'll feed it to the dog and the cats, whatever,
Yeah.
So I did. And it's not easy, I'll tell you.
No.
It's messy. But at least I can say I did it. And I think hens are easier, actually, than the rooster. But I did it. And it's actually not the first time. I've also done deer and stuff before, but, I feel like, if people really want to, they should try it if they can, if they're if they're in a place where they can, or, in a situation where they can butcher and process their own animal. It's actually interesting. It's a lot. It's work. It's a lot of work. But you know what? But then when I was done, I had this huge rooster, and he was big, and he didn't even fit in one of my pots, and I was like, well, it was kind of like half a day's work to kill him and butcher him and pluck him and stuff, and you have to soak him in water and pull all the feathers out because I don't have a plucker. This isn't something I do every day, so I'm like pulling all those feathers out. But then at the end, I had this basically a big organic rooster that I had fed on organic feed. I know this rooster was raised and grew up on organic feed its whole life. It was a clean animal. I knew where it came from, and we actually tried him, and he tasted good. So, that was an interesting thing that I did. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, it's a humbling experience, I guess, to be actually in contact with this animal and be.
It is humbling.
It's not something we can all say,
It's not glamorous. Like, I don't talk about it like, oh, look at this wonderful thing I did. But, I did do it, and I didn't waste the bird. I did cook it, and the bird was eaten, So, and I felt at least good that he didn't go to waste, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Nothing was wasted. I think it's the misconceptions that really fuel this whole vegan debate. And that's what prevented me from figuring it out sooner and from dealing with it. It's the misconceptions that keep the whole thing afloat, that we're actually saving more animals by not eating them. That's not true. There's a lot of agricultural victims that are just there because of all the plants being processed and all the wild habitats being cut down in order for that.
And whatever little other things are living out in those fields, lots of rabbits, and I'm sure.
Yeah. And then that protein's toxic and you don't need it, and that you can get it from combining other sources, when in reality, there's a full profile that gets absorbed properly. So it's all these little misconceptions that end up convoluting and twisting the truth in a way that wouldn't make sense to somebody that's just living off of the land, surviving with their animals, and in the day-to-day experience of what life means. I think it's one of the misconceptions that probably fuels us is that, well, if you can survive without killing those animals, then why should we?
Yeah.
And that was one that kept me going for so long, but it nearly killed me. So
yeah,
how can that add up? You know? So maybe actually life is more difficult than we want to admit, but also more rewarding, more complex, and not going to be found at the back of a bottle of pills from the doctor or from what the government tells you to do with your personal time.
Yeah. I actually feel like if people who ate meat had to process their own meat, there would be a lot less waste.
Yeah,
because now, you see these factory farms, and I don't agree with factory farms.
Me neither.
That's the thing. I try to buy like beef from local farms if I can, or process animals that we harvest or whatever. But it's, there's a lot of waste in the factory farm industry,
and cruelty.
Yeah, absolutely. And those animals aren't healthy animals. It's just not a happy place. But if everybody, if we were living more in line with nature and the creation and the way that we were supposed to, then you would only take what you needed. Especially because, trust me, it is not easy to process a chicken. It's messy and it's smelly. And, it's a pain in the butt. It took me like half the day. But then, but it's like a lot of food, especially an animal that size. So once you do it, you can feed your family and stuff. But like I said, there's a lot less waste, because you're using everything. And I'm not going to go and buy, butcher more chickens than we're going to eat, just so I can have them
then
lined
there ends
up
up less waste. Yeah.
I wouldn't, you don't do that. So it is, a way to do it, to live in line with nature.
Yeah. On the note of self-sufficiency, you could do that much more easily by keeping a few rabbits or a few chickens, or had a bit more land and had ruminants on it, than the issue of self-sufficiency on a vegan diet. Or when I need, kilometers and kilometers of the certain plant food, or I don't know what, or I need these specialty superfoods, or I need to live next to the equator, like that. You can't really do it unless it's under a certain banner. You have access to certain things. But even then, it's it can either just be lackluster, or somebody feels that the need to get those nutrients back, or it can go horribly wrong and you can reach a critical stage. So I was in pain all of the time. I got fibromyalgia and IBS, and everything hurt. My skin was destroyed. My hormones were destroyed. I was severely anemic by the end, and I had what felt like a silent heart attack when just the end. Your teeth are dissolving, your hair is falling out. How can that be the epitome of health?
Right.
And I had, after those raw eggs, I really was hesitant. I had a period of time when I just couldn't stop eating it. It's like my body was just making up time. And then you reach a point where you just don't want it anymore. And I think that that's it. I've eaten all the nutrients I could possibly have. But yeah, it was that experience again that just had me questioning, what have I been believing? What have I been doing? Because this wasn't bad. This was good. It felt good. I've got energy again. My gums were gray and they're red now within a day. What? This toxic stuff is killing me. It's bringing me back to life. This can't be happening.
Wow,
So,
it's
yeah,
interesting that it tasted sweet. It's almost like when your body craves something, it even tastes better to you than it would normally. Like where somebody else would be like, "Ugh, I don't want that. It's gross." It's because you don't need it. But
Yeah,
if
when you
need
don't need it, yeah.
yeah. But if you need
It
it,
tastes right.
your body is like, "Oh yes, just give me some more of that. We like this."
So I found out that a lot of my issues were caused by most of the plants that I was eating. And I did pretty strict carnivore for the first year, but my body had an aversion to the plants right at the beginning. I just didn't want them anymore, especially when I started having the animal products. It just felt like it was filler. It was nonsense. I didn't want any of it. My body and my brain, I was just focused on give me the nutrients. I ate so much in that first year after my transition. I was just having like 4 eggs, like scrambled eggs, like just eat, like coming back to life. And I didn't want anything else. That gradually decreased. And then I reintroduced some things. I still have intolerances and, well, no ability to digest certain things. But now I know I'm not forcing myself to do it. Whereas before, my diet was extremely high in oxalates and just certain plants, eating vegetables completely raw because it's better and absorbing nothing. I think we've lost touch with how foods are meant to be eaten as a general whole. We mix all types of food groups and eat them all together. We eat things in a highly processed way. We cook things to death. And then the things that need to be a certain way, we've got no clue about it. It's like pesticide ridden. Certain plants have to be boiled in order to neutralize certain toxins and increase the vitamin load.
Yeah.
And sprouting, soaking, fermenting, something. We have to do something, but we've lost that.
Right. I know people are like, you're not supposed to eat, you weren't supposed to eat food that way, or you're not supposed to have food cooked with fire. I'm like, okay, well, you ain't supposed to be driving that car either down the road, but I bet you do that, don't you? Right? Like you're supposed to be walking on your 2 feet. And that's it. Right? Like, let's just not, utilize our big brains for anything here.
Honestly, I haven't found anything that can be eaten raw, like fruits and meat. You can eat those things raw.
Right.
It works. Your body can do it. But vegetables, no. It's a lot of fiber. Can't do anything with it. We can't break down the stuff. Can't get anything out of it. Let alone the types of like phytic acid or things that block absorption and digestion. Why are we doing this to ourselves? I think that's the...
Yeah, why? Do you now in day-to-day life when you're looking around, like just walking around out in public, or things you see on TV or hear on the radio or whatever media you may come across, do you feel like there's a lot of programming for the vegan diet, like a lot of pushing of it everywhere?
Yeah, it's playing on people's guilt. And again, that concept that conglomerates and the government, nobody needs to pay for anything, but the little guy does. And one of those agendas is, well, how to make our lives more green and how to make us pay more for things that are not our fault, but that we're complicit in. And that's one of the most touted ones, is like just change your diet to this, the golden rule here, and you'll have done your part. It will solve it. And there's a lot of dirty marketing around it for sure. But I don't think that it does really have that much traction because such a high failure rate. If that didn't exist, maybe it would be something that could sweep through like wildfire, but it's already difficult enough getting people to change their habits, let alone change their diets, and let alone do something so different to the norm and so restrictive. See stories of people not doing well on it, and then luckily themselves not get ill after whatever period of time that they do it. So those seem to be the exceptions. And, you know, I take the approach that people have to try things out for themselves, and you can only say as much as you can.
Right, exactly. Sorry, I was, I guess my Rockfin stream went down. I don't know what happened there. Oops. Anyway.
It's just a method to greenwash, I think. It's a really convenient way of saying, hey, just ignore what this company is doing entirely just because it released a vegan range, or it's doing this or it's doing that. And we don't look any further into it, but like, what does that actually mean?
Right. Question. This person says, what you guys think about pork? I actually don't eat pork. Do you?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
You don't have any, okay.
No, I don't really think about it that much. I think a lot of people have different angles that they take with that. Mm-hmm. It seems to be a very strongly religious subject of it's not okay for this and this and this reason. Well,
it does come from religious, but there is also a thing where pigs like eat everything. They eat filth. That's for me, just for me personally. When I found out about the pigs and what they eat, I was like, I don't think I want to have anything to do with that animal anymore.
Yeah.
But you know, it's not, there's nothing ethical. There's no ethical thing against
as
animals,
long as it's
or religious
the same principle,
really, that
the animals are raised well and you know where they're coming from, and or they're your own, then I think it's a personal choice at the end of the day.
Yeah.
For me, I have not been picky at all with my transition because I was just trying everything and just being like, I don't know what I know or don't know or feel about this.
Right. So how long have you
hadn't felt for those 7.5 years, which was stability, just a baseline of grounded reality where I could self-regulate, because I'd lost entirely the ability to self-regulate. Not only because I was very irritable and my blood sugar would go down and I'd need the next meal, and I was relying heavily on just sugar. Like I'm just eating lots and lots of dates and eating lots and lots of fruits. But it was just the ability to self-regulate. Like something happens, but I'm not that fussed about it anymore. A calm nervous system. I could sleep better. It was all this stuff that I just was getting used to in my life. Like, I just have to live with this now. I have to live with all of these compounding factors, and I can't deviate, and I can't do this because then I'll get horrible blisters in my tongue. I could barely eat anything by the end of my vegan experience. I would eat something and my tongue would get all cut up and get welts all over it.
Wow.
Get extreme gut pains. And so I had to restrict even within the restriction and try to live with that. And I had a horrible candida infection, and horrible head fatigue and brain fog and fatigue. And so
brain fog,
all that started to shift. Yeah. I had a really intense carb anger fest at the beginning because I cut it out completely. And I experienced for the first time what it was like for the things in my body to be addicted to it, to that candida infection to be kind of taking over. I was so angry and I just wanted sugar, no matter the cost. And I just rode that out. And when it passed, I started to see more clearly what I really wanted to eat and what was something that I was just just doing, because I thought I needed it or I was feeding something, but it wasn't really me. And that's what it felt like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what it felt like for me as well. I will say that what it did do for me is it made me, I reduced my intake of meat. Like I didn't, and I also reduced how much I ate overall, which I feel like you don't have to eat as much food as we're told.
Yeah.
Like 3 meals a day, and it has to have this, and that in it. You know, like
it's much simpler.
Yeah, that's obviously all bullshit too. But so what it did for me is it helped me to like reduce my food intake. So I don't eat as much anymore, and I don't eat meat with every meal, but I do still eat it, you know, when I feel like I want to, or if I feel like I need to. And you know, and then there are days when I just don't. Like yesterday, I didn't eat any meat. I had like eggs for breakfast, and then I had a vegetarian sort of quesadilla thing with mushrooms and onions and veggies, and that was it. That's what I ate like the whole day. But it's, you know, and then some days I'll have fish or, you know, or steak or whatever, or chicken, a lot of chicken.
It's so much simpler. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's, you know, I don't feel like I have to eat constantly because it's kind of like what you described. I felt like a grazing animal. I felt like I constantly had to be eating because I wasn't feeling sustained. I wasn't feeling like, you know, I was low on energy. So I was like, I have to eat more. Or I have to, you know, do something to keep going because I'm like, there's something missing. You know, my body is missing something. That's how I started to feel.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when I finally made some eggs and I ate some eggs. And then after that, it was like, yeah, there's no going
and that's
back.
it.
There's
it's
no going back.
bioavailable. It absorbs. You got those nutrients, and you didn't have to buy monthly multivitamins that already are synthetic and don't absorb as well.
Right.
Just, you know, the fastest experiment that you could conduct with this, like if you're having a gut feeling or you want to test it, it's most likely going to feel right because, well, it's got nutrients in it.
Yeah.
And we can't really debate that.
Yeah. Yeah. Although I know there's people that out there that are probably who have a vegan diet and don't even want to hear any of this, but you know, that's more power to you.
Yeah.
I'm not against it. Like this isn't about shaming vegans or bashing vegans, but what it is I just feel like people shouldn't be so hung up about what their diet is. And if you do eat meat and, you know, you're in a group of people who don't, or they've got someone shaming you for it, or, you know, I feel like that's wrong. Like we shouldn't be telling everybody what to do.
No.
You shouldn't be going around telling everybody what their diet should be. I mean, but I did learn that there are certain things overall that just seem to be good for people, which is cutting out processed sugar. Right?
Yeah.
I cut out processed sugar, and that was huge for me. You know, that one I kind of tell everybody. One thing you should do is cut out processed sugar, because that is really causing inflammation and making people sick, and that's like making you gain weight. Like in those diet drinks, sugar substitutes, all that stuff is really horrible. You got to get off of that. But then what you replace that with is high fat. The high fat content.
It's very satiating.
Yeah, replaces the sugar, and it replaces that craving. And after a while, you don't even care about the sugar being gone anymore. You know, so it's like if you drink coffee with a lot of sugar, I would put, you know, butter or
cream,
heavy cream. You know, something to replace that sugar. There's other things you can do, but overall, as far as
that's definitely
like what people eat, I feel like, you know, you can if everything in moderation, if you balance your diet, and then also nothing replaces actually getting up and moving your body. You know, people, if you're doing it just to lose weight, nothing replaces getting up.
Yeah, you can't just focus on one
body.
axis. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are some sound and kind of universal things that once we do away with them and we only focus on one side of the story, you can bet that there's something fishy about that, because there's more to it. Like, for example, where someone actually comes from and what's local around them and what their family has done and what their ancestors have done and how their body responds. It's not a one size fits all thing, but I think it specifically doing that fostered intolerance. For me, it was a logical step to become utterly and totally intolerant of everything around me, and think that they were all doing it wrong. But that's why I equate it to religious stuff, because particularly heavily evangelical ways of doing things, because I was a born again Christian from when I was 15 until kind of college years, when I just fell into a deep, dark pit of despair and just thought, well, this is what I've been relying on isn't really working for me, but thing like that. And it was just that type of belief system that, oh no, we must be afraid for everyone so much because they're going to lose their way and everything's going to go wrong. That is the belief system that had me telling everybody that their diet was wrong and that I was clearly right, because I care about you. And if you keep eating that, you're going to die. And it's just, I don't even know where and how this gets that complicated. But I think you're right in saying that, well, it's individual at the end of the day. And the only thing that can speak louder than that is personal experience.
Exactly.
So if you've been through something, you can lay it out, but it doesn't necessarily have to mean something for somebody else's experience unless it resonates with them. And then they can see how that fits.
Early on, people into becoming vegan, and there was some stuff about it being equated to being in a blood cult, but I haven't seen really any true evidence of that. It's just, it is what it is, everybody. And then the one thing that was really interesting also that I learned out of this is that once I did go and I started doing the vegetarian diet, and I was really thriving on that for a while, I also came across the information where it was the diet, using a diet, going by the diet by your blood type. Have you ever looked into that?
Yeah, it doesn't hold up when you go deeper into it.
Really?
But it's an interesting concept that there are certain things that work better for others. But I think it's too simplistic according just to the blood type. I don't think there was evidence for it. The guy was just putting all this stuff together.
Yeah. Although I will say
but there's some truth to it.
That it did say that for my blood type that it was that the vegetarian diet was the best.
Yeah.
And I did okay on that. But I do also still eat meat. Just not as much. And it's okay to eat meat. This whole thing is just like I want people to know that it's okay to eat meat. It's okay to eat a diet that you feel sustains you, even if you feel like maybe somebody that you follow, maybe somebody on YouTube that talks about something that you like, and that's one thing where you differ and you feel like maybe pressured to maybe go that way because that person is a vegan, has a vegan diet and pushes that stuff. But I just feel like it's okay to not do that. I just want people to know it's okay to not do that. If that's not what you're into, if you don't feel good on that diet, that's fine. And it's okay. And it's okay to listen to your body and do what's good for you and makes you feel healthy, right?
I mean, it's good to be curious and it's good to try things. But it comes back to knowing when to stop if something isn't going well, or listening to your body.
Awaken State says, my body loves brisket. That's funny. Me too, but I like beef brisket. Smoked beef brisket. That's my favorite.
I just felt like I was missing out on so much by the time that I came back to it. It's like, what have I been doing?
Yeah. Yeah. And that was it too. And I was just like, how are people sustaining themselves on this? It's so just not, I found it to be really unsustainable. I could not, I like you said, I didn't have any energy. I had really bad brain fog. I just started to feel just blah.
Yeah.
So, but then once I started eating the meat again and the eggs, well, it was eggs and cheese initially, like I said, and then started eating some meat. I was like, it just made me realize you just eat smaller amounts less
that's
often,
it.
and that's it.
Yeah. And the inflammation went down. I remembered something that immediately changed that I was struggling with for ages. My family would call my legs chicken legs because I completely lost my calves. They were just little matchsticks. And no matter what I did, I couldn't build any more muscle past a certain point. My arms got really, broken down. The protein, the muscles were all gone. And as soon as I started eating meat again, it just puffed up. It just filled in again. And I was just like, wow, magic. What is this? I've got calves again. And it takes absolutely nothing to build muscle right now. And the fat percent is really, really low. And it's just, I don't have to do anything for my body to respond really well. Whereas before I was atrophying and disappearing. And that can't be good. It's just,
No.
So that was a pretty immediate bounce back in that sense. And the inflammation went down. I mean, the difference in my skin, the difference in my face, the difference in my eyes, like the brightness came back. It was like a light bulb turned back on. So if somebody's getting into that stage, trying to introduce something again could have the desired effect. You have to test with yourself. You don't really know. I'm almost glad that it went that badly because I'm a very, very stubborn person and I was convinced I was doing the right thing. So it had to basically break me down entirely to the point that I was just desperate to solve it, and still sure that I would try it and it'd be horrible. But then my body overruled it. It was just like, no, this is correct. You're going to continue doing this.
It's very interesting. I wonder, it kind of makes me wonder, and this is a little bit of a sidetrack, kind of makes me wonder where that comes from, because I know that there's neurons, they tell you just have your brain, your one head brain, but there's also neurons in your heart. So your heart has a brain, and there's also neurons in your gut. Your gut has a brain. So there's actually 3 brains, and they all talk to each other.
Yeah.
But this is another thing that they don't tell us when we're growing up. They completely tell you, they don't tell you anything correct about your body when you're growing up as far as health, or at least they didn't. I don't know if they've changed it since I went to indoctrination camp.
No, it's very limited and sterile in what it does share. So when you bring in that level of nuance and detail and interesting little levels, I'm a biology teacher, it can change how you look at everything, how you engage with everything, knowing that every bit of you is alive, and the gut microbiome and the gut brain axis can literally control how you see the world. So again, diet is pretty fundamental to how we feel, but it's unique as
some correlation
there,
right? I needed to have those big fat cheeseburgers, and it just felt so wonderful to me when I was pregnant eating these cheeseburgers, but clearly I needed it.
Yeah, there's truth to what your body craves, especially under certain types of duress, because then it's no longer just your preference, or you're a bit hungry or lazy, or you're depending on it. It's like something, your instinct is taking over and is directing you towards certain things. So pregnancy is definitely one of those times.
Oh yeah, because it's almost like the baby becomes it's almost a bad way to describe it, but it almost is like a parasite. It's there and it's taking everything it needs to grow. All nutrients becomes funneled to growing that baby.
I think I read somewhere that women's bone density can go down that time in the same way that when chickens lay eggs. So you have to keep up your nutrient intake, because otherwise it's
you
just
absolutely
taking everything
do.
it can.
And you have to reduce sugar and carb intake too, because that was a problem for me too. And so I was just eating, steaks and veggies.
One thing we haven't talked about in this discussion is the effect on fertility. and kind of the bigger picture of if we become infertile because of this, and or eat too little to sustain life, therefore have miscarriages or bring babies into the world that are not properly developed, and then try to feed them vegan diets, which that's another subject. That's child abuse. That's
yeah.
But what about that? It's like, you need all these nutrients and you need to feed yourself. So why do you only need to feed yourself if you're pregnant, but not all the time if this body sustains itself in that way?
Yeah.
It just
exactly. And
upside down world.
And I mean, and then the baby comes out and drinks your breast milk. That's not vegan.
So it's not vegan. It isn't.
Exactly.
But there is a push for people searching for vegan formula. So
that's not good.
Formula as is. I've looked at the ingredients. It's mostly plant oils and sugars and rice, starch.
Yeah.
That's what we're starting babies out with in their lives anyway. So I can't say that anything about the way that this world operates really knows what it's doing or focuses on nutrition as is. So I feel like veganism is a natural pushback in a cultural way to kind of take back what seems like an inversion and try to make it your own, but the seeds were planted by something that wasn't so friendly. And I think that becomes clear, maybe, possibly, eventually. I mean, it was loud for me, but that's just my personal experience and what you had in those 7 months.
I agree. And I also agree with you about baby formula. The ingredients to baby formula are horrid. If you haven't looked, even the good stuff, it's like weird stuff that you can't pronounce. It's just, it's not good.
And it's so expensive and a coveted substance. But yeah, we could have a goat and just give your child goat milk and it would get more nutrients than it would off of this rice sludge.
Yeah,
so
I don't as long as it's raw. But I'm a big proponent of breastfeeding. Like I breastfed all my babies, and I breastfed my daughter until she was 4.
Yeah, you can breastfeed for a long time.
And she's extremely healthy. My children were very healthy. They were fat babies. They had nothing but breast milk for the first 6 months of their lives. And then, then you start introducing the solid foods, and then they do the breast milk and the food and stuff. But, I'm a huge proponent of breastfeeding, which is not vegan. and it's also very draining. Like, when you have a child, and then you actually have extra weight on you because you gain weight when you have a baby. Obviously, all your body is in baby making mode. Actually, when you breastfeed, it helps your womb contract back down to its normal size. Like there's actual physical benefits to it. It also your body still has to use a lot of nutrients to produce that breast milk. So you still have to eat good stuff, and you still get cravings in your, after breastfeeding, then your body's like, okay, time to replenish. And then that's when the mom, or I used to get the major like hunger. I'd be like, oh my God, I'm so hungry. I need to go eat right now. It's like, it doesn't even really end, after you have the baby. It's still going on while you're breastfeeding, and that baby needs, they don't have any teeth. They don't chew any food. So they need to live off the mother's milk for at least the first 6 to 8 months.
Yeah.
Ideally. And then they can do it. They can live off of it for years as a supplement. They can get lots of nutrients from that. There's lots of benefits for it. And actually, when the children start losing their teeth, they call those teeth, those children's teeth, those are actually, they don't call it that anymore, but the old term for it is milk teeth.
Milk teeth, yeah.
Right? Because that's when they're supposed to be finally like, okay, now it's like they're old enough that they're weaning age, and they lose those teeth and they get their adult teeth. And then that's like end of the line breastfeeding. But that's like well past what most people think. Even me, when I breastfed my daughter till 4, that's well past what most people would consider is normal for breastfeeding. And most people don't even go that long. But I did.
You
And
definitely can, and it's healthier. Yeah.
it is. And my daughter she's extremely well adjusted, highly intelligent, smart, beautiful. I love her to death. Obviously, I'm a little biased, but when I see the difference, like because my first child, I breastfed, but not quite as long. And I see the difference. To me, I saw the difference in the health. Like I feel like she thrived a little bit more, you
Yeah.
know? And so there is a benefit to that.
Yeah. There'll be stronger bones, there'll be higher immunity. And let's talk about the signs, I think, of malnutrition as a whole. And we bring the
Sure.
work of Dr. Weston Price into it, because he was a dentist that was doing the work of analyzing the dental health of different communities and cultures around the world, and finding a vast difference between those that had moved to the cities and those that were still in the countryside. And, what is that? It's obviously a different lifestyle, different foods, different components of their environment, but primarily the diet. Particularly, for example, if we talk about the Scottish example, where in the countryside, they were having whatever animals were around them. Something that I think about when we're seeing all these crowded teeth, especially in young kids as they're growing older and their jaws are really narrow and there's a lot of crowding with those teeth. I saw, that's another difference that I remembered. My teeth were moving. I can't tell you what the rate was. I'm not going to exaggerate it and say it was moving at a rate of 1 millimeter every year or every 2 months. But they were crowding the longer that I was doing the vegan thing. And as soon as I introduced the animal products again, it stopped. Then it began to reverse. So it feels like it's not going to go all the way, but they moved a bit back to where they would have been. But that difference, if somebody's had all the proper nutrients for their whole life, breastfed for a long time, and then having that bioavailable nutrition, what that looks like in their skeleton and in their teeth is so different than somebody that's deprived. So I don't know why we're depriving ourselves as a trend and a health kick and a lifestyle, but it shows in the body. And that's the thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't think I went long enough to notice my teeth decline for it, but I had already had sort of my teeth health decline. You know why? Because I had 3 children. Because children they take everything. They take everything that they need when they're growing. I'm telling you, it is like you have no choice. And so I didn't realize until years after, and I was like, wow, if I'd have known, then I would have eaten better. I would have made better choices while I was pregnant. I would have had a more purposeful diet. And even though because I had my children, years ago, my youngest is 10 now, but, and it was before I really got into the whole health thing and realizing like how bad the food really is right before. So even though I was cooking food for myself, I don't know that I was still necessarily making the best choices, and I hadn't cut out processed sugar yet. And sugar, eating processed sugar keeps your body from absorbing these nutrients too. Yeah. So if I'm pregnant and I'm eating sugar, which I do remember having a bad sweet tooth now that I think about it when I was pregnant. So if I'm doing both of those things, well, then that's contributing to that's leaching more and more nutrients out of my teeth.
Yeah, because sugar takes a lot of magnesium to process. That's another thing. So a lot of these foods just take our minerals, and it obviously draws from the teeth and the bones and our nutrient stores. And we're not thinking about the hidden cost of the processing of these elements, not only on the planet when these foods are made and pushed out there, but also when we ingest them and what that ends up doing down the line. And I think we've got an advertisement for poor nutritional health all around us, and we've had it for decades. It's watching the people that we love in our lives decline. Mm-hmm. And it's just, we already know what it looks like. And unfortunately, nobody's come to our rescue and been able to help us with anything except cut more fats out, go low fat, depend on pills, just go home to die or eat hospital food. But there's more to this than that. And the one way to fight it being becoming ultra processed.
Yeah.
But in a, like, I don't know. I don't even know how that's supposed to work. Eating things that are not even local to your area and just processing them as heavily as possible to try to get something out of them.
Right. And also eating things that are out of season.
Yeah.
You know, I also found myself craving things that are seasonally appropriate, if that makes sense. Like in the fall, I'm like, ooh, I want a butternut squash and I want acorn, and I want to make these stews and stuff. And like, I don't know. I think that's just part of being more in tune with like your body and the seasons and your surroundings and stuff like that.
Intuitive eating and following cycles in your body is kind of the only authority that there can be on the subject at the end of the day.
So how is your health now after going back? Have you?
Yeah, it's night and day. Like I'm not going anywhere. I have my mental health back. Not a psychotic mess, and feel present, feel strong, and can walk for large periods of time. I'm not freezing all of the time. Like I'm in England right now, so it's colder, but I just don't feel it the way that I used to when I was here before, when I was vegan. I was just cold all of the time. So yeah, a lot of things are much, much better, and they keep improving the longer that I stick with it. I was able to heal my gut, which is not something I could say that when I was doing what I was doing before. I thought I was healing my gut, but it was an ever increasing worsening because I was becoming more and more intolerant to everything because I'm shredding it. So yeah, I feel good. And I know what to think for that and what works. And if I have a reaction to something now, I'm on it immediately rather than before thinking that these foods are right. Therefore, no matter what I experience on them is not related to them, which is kind of one of the traps that kept me doing it. Makes no sense.
Karen, stay in your lane. Listen, Super Tramp, I don't stay in my lane. I talk about whatever I want to talk about. Is it a commercial for meat and dairy? Maybe so, if you take it that way.
Definitely. Like,
I mean, guess what? Meat and dairy makes me feel good when I eat it. When I didn't eat meat and dairy, I felt very malnourished. So maybe it is. No, it's not a commercial for meat and dairy. What it is it's basically a debunking of a vegan diet being a one-size-fits-all diet for everyone. Some people live on it, some people like it, some people thrive on it. Okay, great, good for you. That's not for everybody. I tried it, I didn't like it, I certainly didn't thrive on it. I felt like hell on it, and Yasmeen,
I nearly lost my life on it.
Yeah. So
personal experience is what people's voices need to be heard and speaking about what they went through. I think what this is about more so than anything is going back to our roots and supporting local farmers, and that ruminants are very, very healthy for our cultures and our soils. So I don't know what we do with that information. We definitely have to stop funding criminals and corporations. And I think that's what it's brought me back to, but it's given me the energy to do it. That was always my belief. That was always my mission. Mm-hmm. But I was agree. Flat. I had no energy, no health in order to do it.
Right.
Now I do. So I'm going to thank that animal for the life that it's given me, and I'm going to fight for it. That's what I'm going to do.
Yeah. I mean, and I think there's something to be said for raising animals in a farm or whatever and giving them a good life. and then, processing them in a way, and people say, oh, it's not humane to kill animals. Okay, well, I'm not going to sit here and argue ethics with that or not, but if that's what you got to do, that's what you got to do.
Everything has to die for something else. Everything.
I mean,
Every life.
the lion goes out and hunts gazelles and eats. Is that bad? Is the lion in a blood cult, or is the lion just being a lion? No, but
we can rise above that. But
right, that's what they say. Right, I have these cats that come out of the woods. These cats kill everything they can get their little paws on. That are the cats, and deceived? Are they in a blood? No. Okay, this is just nature. It's the circle of life. And there's actually a whole thing that I went through too with as far as animal communication, because I started watching this woman, Anna Breitenbach, and I don't know if you're familiar with her or anything, but anyways, there's a whole thing about animal communicators and people who have telepathic communication with animals, interspecies telepathic communication. And I watched a whole documentary about it because I had been looking at it a lot and trying to do it and stuff. And I started wondering, well, is this where that thing is? Is this bad? Is this going to show me that it's bad to eat animals? I was expecting to be convinced that it was bad to eat animals after getting into animal communication, but I actually it didn't change it. I was okay with it before, and I am still okay now, because there was a whole thing in this documentary where she went out and she was with these tribes people in Africa, and these tribes people, the whole, what you were talking about, blessing an animal or thanking it for its sacrifice, they did a whole dance beforehand where they, it was a ceremony the night before the hunt, where they're basically putting out this energy. And if you're awake and into, the alternative makeup of the realm, and you're not a heliocentrist, and you know that the ether is something that really exists, basically what they're doing is they're putting this energy out into the ether, hey, that we need to take an animal from the herd so that we can feed our tribe, right? Because that's what they do. They all use it and they use every little bit of it.
Every bit,
right?
Yeah.
So they're saying, and it has the words under the screen where it's basically translating what they're saying, and it's oh great, spirit of this animal, and they're asking, for one, to be successful in a hunt to feed their family. Well, then the next day they go out, and they find one of these animals, and it's and she's there observing this and witnessing it, and it's almost the animal will run initially, there's an initial response for self-preservation in all living things, we know that, but then once they get an animal, once they take it down or they strike it with their weapon, and then the weapon, it's almost at a certain point the animal just sort of stops struggling, and it sort of succumbs to what is happening. It's okay, it's my time now. And the spirits of these animals haven't been programmed the way we have to have such a desperate connection to stay in this physical realm, or such a deep-seated fear of death, where you know what I mean? They sort of understand that your physical time in this realm is temporary. And they understand that there is an end. It's just a cycle. It's and so whereas people, us humans, for whatever, probably because of our indoctrination, we sort of have this thing where we're really afraid of death, and it's oh, you go there and you could go to hell, blah 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 blah, which I don't believe.
Yeah,
in
we have a lot
either.
of stories around all of it.
There's a lot of stories and stuff to sort of psychologically make you afraid of that thing, or consider death like a bad thing, but really death is just part of life. In the same way that being born is part of life.
Yes.
When you're born, you come into this world,
and it's bloody, and it's scary,
and it's traumatic, and it's
and nail.
And it's painful for me, for the mom. It's painful, right? It is sort of a violent thing. It's sort of a bringing of a soul from the spirit realm into the physical world, and it is sort of like a thing. It's an intense event, well, death is sort of an intense event
Yeah.
too, but it's just part of life. It's part of our existence here, because I don't think that this is it, right? There's sort of, I think there's different levels, and we can get into that.
There's more to all of it. And we
There's-
have a limited understanding of what life is, what death is, what the transition means. We have limited contact with these initiatory experiences and events, like you said, that challenge us and open us. I find that we're far closer to who we are in those moments, or the veil is thinner, if you will. And what communicates with you in those moments, and what you feel and what you see, is so different to our daily consciousness. And it's just, we can't just cut these things entirely out of our lives and act like they're not there, because they are, and they have lessons to teach us.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. No One's Flower says, I became more appreciative towards animals when I went back to meat. I agree.
Yeah.
I appreciate it too. I am appreciative of it. And I don't like to waste food. I am not anywhere near as wasteful as I used to be. You know, it was so easy to be wasteful because of the way things have been set up in this system. And you know, our idea of health and what you should and shouldn't be
and
doing.
needing so many ingredients and doing so much. Like, I just appreciate the simplicity for me now. It's like, just, this is it. This is what I'm going to eat. I'll eat it and I'm sustained. Done. I have a bowl of yogurt. I have some boiled eggs. Like, I'm finished. I'm done. I'm not obsessing all day long about food and what do I do and how. And it's just, it feels like it frees up all this other energy to live your life, which I guess was the goal all along.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
I always loved animals, but my connection deepened, actually, particularly to the cow, the sacred cow. That doesn't come from nowhere. It's something real that people have engaged with these herds for so long and gotten so much from them and given so much back to them, that rather than the way that I was looking at it before, which was they're helpless little things that I have to step in with my idea of what it is that they need. I don't know. That's what it felt like.
Yeah.
A wise old energy that, like you said, knows its time and its place and its cycle and how we fit into it. And
yeah, absolutely. Someone asked if you had a book. I don't know. Do you have a book?
I am in the process of writing an encyclopedia or a grand theory of the universe, all my life's work, but no book other than hormonal herbal healing. I have that one. That's ready. It's a little guide on plants and balancing hormones, but the other stuff's in the works.
Okay, cool. Well, do you have a page or anything where people can find you or follow you, or are you just getting going on all that stuff?
Yeah, I have my Instagram, my Depop. That's mainly where I have some of the services up that include the ebook and things like holistic health consults and tarot consults, but also my Facebook page. That's mainly where people can get in touch or look at some of my work.
Which is what? What is that? What is your
Facebook.com /Yasmeen.Dahdah.
Okay.
That's it.
And what's your Instagram? At
YAS.MEEN72.
Cool. I'll have to put those links in the description later. I don't have those links. What are her links, please? Yeah.
If people want to look at my old vegan videos, my YouTube channel is called Natural Order, but I need to update all my new information because I wasn't in the right headspace.
Right. So you're going to be building a new YouTube channel or a new channel?
Yeah. Or just adding on to that one. But I think a total reset happened for me when I made this shift as well, because there was a lot of stuff that I was following and doing and looking at that just does not resonate anymore. So new direction.
Okay. What would you say your Instagram was again?
YAS dot MEEN 72.
Okay. There we go. Okay, so I want to put at least one link in the chat where people can find you.
All right.
And there is your Instagram in the chat.
It's a big thing to overcome recovering from veganism, let's say, or any type of malnutrition or eating disorder. That's the type of stuff that I specialize in, because it's system-wide what can happen when you aren't absorbing and therefore relaying to your brain and your nervous system the sustenance and the messages to function properly.
Absolutely. All right. Anything else you want to add before we wrap it up? Want to say? What's your message? What do you want to put out there?
I think my message is the summary of basically everything that we went through, that there's a lot of misconceptions that can derail and confuse people, but there's no one outer authority on what that truth is. It's a subjective reality, but learning to be in touch with your own body and practice mindful engagement with the world and intuitive eating, for example, getting back in touch with your own intuition and your own signals, that can be the very first step to exploring your experience in the world. So testing things for yourself, learning to listen to the cues and the signs, trusting that hunch if there's more to be discovered. Like you said earlier, not to cave in to the agenda and then the constant bombardment of this information, or guilt trips, or the glamorous lifestyle of anybody that you follow or listen to and what they are or are not doing. Because at the end of the day, you have to live this life. You have to experience your own experience. So make sure that you are in line with that. It doesn't really matter what other people think about it. And I think the main message for me is that you can turn things around, and that there is a fundamental connection between what we absorb, how we absorb, and how we function. And that there's been a massive disconnect between all of those elements, including how we engage with our environment and how we feel about it. And there's such a wealth of experience when it comes to these transitions, trying things, transitioning into them, leaving them, life, death, engaging with animals in our environment, that it's worth exploring, I think. And there's more. There's more to say about all of this. I want to tell people to support their local farmers. I'm going to say that probably investing in cattle in places like Africa and South America, and it's just, people need to build communities again so that they know where they're getting what from, and just start questioning this process stuff. And it comes in many shapes and forms. It's not just stuff in packets in the shop and sugar. It's processed lifestyles. It's images and presentations of things that hold no basis in reality. And you need yourself in order to figure that out. So I think if you start doing something that takes you out of the count, if there's an agenda, it worked because it took you out. You're not a player anymore. Right. You don't have the attention, the span, or the energy, or the ability any longer. And we need people now more than ever to be present in their bodies and in their lives.
Yes.
To make a change in the world.
I absolutely agree. Very well said. Very well said, Yasmeen. Hey, listen,
Thanks for
thank you.
having me.
Yeah, thank you for joining me.
And removing the shame around what individuals have experienced.
Exactly.
Okay, I'll send you stuff. Thank you so much.
All right. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you once again. And thanks
You're
everybody
welcome.
for being here. And I will see you all Tuesday with